Welcome to this Facebook Live where we'll be discussing visual tools. My name's Sue Hinds. I'm Head of Services and a speech and language therapist working at Dementia Carers Count. And I'm joined today by Gina Smith, founder of Create Visual Aids. Some of you who've been to our Facebook Lives in the past will remember Gina came to talk to us towards the end of last year, I think it was. And we talked about the use of visual aids and storyboards with a person with dementia. And it was just so useful having Gina here, we decided to invite her back for a second session, and we'll be talking more about how visual aids can be used in different ways. Before we go any further, Gina, would you like to introduce yourself a little more and your background?
Thank you, Sue. Yes, as you said, I'm the founder of Create Visual Aids. I used to be a primary school teacher, and I found that children at our school had visual aids in school and they didn't have them at home. And it's actually really important for home because there's far less of a strict routine at home, and that's where they're needed the most. So I left teaching and I started a small business, and I created a range of visual symbols to help people communicate. Only I quickly found that they're not just for children. I knew this already, but I had lots of people coming to me and saying, actually, these would be great for adults with learning difficulties, for stroke victims, for people with dementia. So as I've developed my range of visuals, we've started catering for all needs. And yeah, just discovering more and more how useful visuals are. And then you got in touch, Sue, which was brilliant. I was very happy to be able to chat with you.
Yeah, and great, as I say, to have you back on another Facebook Live. So before we get into the discussion around other ways of using visual tools today, just to say, if anybody wants to ask us a question, please put it into the chat and we will try to answer it. Sometimes it takes us a little bit of while to see them and to put them in an order that makes sense for the session. So bear with us if you put a question in, it takes us a little while to get to it. If you don't want to put it in the chat and you want it to make it anonymous, then please do just message us privately, and we can also ask those questions in a private way. And if we don't get to everything during this session, then we will have a look at them after the session and endeavour to get back to you. As I said, we did do a session towards the end of last year, and we focused on the use of visual tools as storyboards. And that is on our YouTube channel, so it's still available to watch if anybody wants to see it, and we'll put a link to it in the chat on here. But I just think as a brief overview, it might be worth just starting with a bit of a recap from that session about what storyboards are and how perhaps they can be used with a person with dementia. Would that be okay, Gina?
Of course. So basically, if somebody doesn't understand, doesn't know what's happening in the day, that's really, really frightening for them. They become very scared, very frustrated, and then their behaviour changes. So what we can do using little pictures is we can show somebody what's happening in their day. So here's an example. Here's one I made earlier. This is just, you call it a storyboard, I call it a visual timetable. It's the same thing. It's basically just a series of pictures showing somebody what's happening. Lunch, car, we're going shopping, we've got an appointment, then we're coming home. This helps people feel a sense of control because they know what's happening. Another way that you could use visuals is you could carry them around on a key ring, attach it to your jeans or to a lanyard. But visual symbols aren't just for showing somebody else what's happening in their day, for communicating to somebody else, but it's also for allowing somebody else to communicate with you. Because if you imagine how frustrating it must be if you can't tell somebody how you're feeling or what it is you need, that we can use pictures to allow somebody to say, I feel ill, or I need a drink, or I need to see my family, whatever it is. By giving someone pictures, you are giving them the opportunity to communicate, which is really important.
Great, thanks, Gina. And it's having other ways to communicate is so important, isn't it? We often rely on the spoken word to understand what someone's saying to us and to communicate our messages. But if you have a dementia and the dementia is beginning to affect the parts of the brain that allow you to understand the words you're hearing or find the words that you want to say, then other ways of communicating need to be found and are incredibly important to someone. So as you say, you've got a range of aids. You call them timetables, I call them storyboards, you might call them a schedule. And I think schedule is quite a nice word as well, isn't it? Because people often think of their daily schedule, and it can orientate someone to what's happening next. And there's a longevity about that information, isn't there? Because it means that someone hasn't heard it and it's gone, they can keep referring back and say, ah, yes, that's what's going to happen next.
That's exactly it, Sue. So words are brilliant if you can process and remember words, but words disappear as soon as they're spoken. So if you are somebody who needs to take a bit of extra time to understand what's being said, or just to remember it, they've gone, and then you're still trying to remember what it was with a picture with a word underneath. Like you say, you can just keep looking at it until, well, as many times as you need to, or until you understand it.
So these schedules, timetables, storyboards, they can help someone with the schedule to understand what's going to happen next in a day. But we also know for somebody with dementia, they may have difficulties in planning just short events, such as getting dressed. What's the sequence of events that will take place when I'm getting dressed? You know, I need to put my socks on, and then I need to put my trousers on, or whichever order you do it. And that's actually quite unique to each individual, isn't there? But we do have a sequence in which we do something. And I know those sorts of schedules can be really important as well, can't they? Not whole day ones.
Absolutely. So I've just brought another example to show you. We can create a schedule just showing what somebody needs to put on to get dressed. And in case I didn't show you earlier, these can just Velcro on and off. And that's a great way of being able to change things around, because we all wear something different every day, don't we? But also you could create a set of instructions about how to brush your teeth, or how to wash your hands, or any day-to-day task. You can just create the instructions visually, and somebody can work through them. And what they can actually do, if it helps them, if they can't remember which one they've done already, is they can take them off as they've done each step of an instruction, so they can see what they've got left to do. Sorry, I dropped them.
That's fine. I want to come back to those, because I think that gives us a really nice introduction to what we really want to talk about today, and that's signs and symptoms, signs and symbols around the house. But before we do, I just want to read out a comment by Marcia, and Marcia says, after watching the previous session about storyboards, I made some for my mum, and it's been really helpful, and it's given her back a little bit of independence.
Amazing. Well done,
yeah, my friend is also now using them with her son, who has learning difficulties, and they've also found them to be hugely beneficial in everyday life. So that's just fantastic, isn't it? And another example of them working.
Yeah, brilliant.
So if we go back to your sequencing timetable for getting dressed, for example, that can be great for somebody to know what part of that task they've done, what part of the task they need to do next. And as Marcia said, give some independence back. But there often comes a time for a person with dementia that they can look at that board, or they know what part of the sequence comes next, but they can't remember where those items are. So, for example, I think, you know, the second one down on your table was trousers. But if you can't remember where your trousers are, then you're going to get stuck in that sequence, and suddenly your independence has gone, hasn't it?
Yeah.
And one of the things that we know is, if I go to my bedroom and I want to get the trousers, then I have to remember which door they're behind. I can't see them behind the wardrobe door or behind the drawer. So I don't know where they are. So can you talk a little bit how these visual symbols can come into play in that situation?
Absolutely. We can simply put signs and symbols wherever they are needed, so that somebody can remember where something is. I know it's not ideal. You might not want signs and symbols all over your house, but actually what you're doing is you're helping somebody have that independence. Like Marcia said, that it's giving someone independence, so they can find those things that they otherwise wouldn't know where they were. But also to give the carer a break, if you've got some respite, let's say you've got somebody else coming in, say to make cups of tea in the kitchen, it's another way that they can find their way around quickly without having to open all your drawers and cabinets and things like that. So you can just label all round the house as you need to. I think you were saying the other day, Sue, weren't you, that actually in an ideal world you wouldn't have doors on your cupboards, but not everybody wants to take the doors off their cupboards. Of course they don't. It's your home, and you want to maintain some sense of normality.
I think you've made some really good points there. I think, yes, we were talking about a truly dementia-friendly kitchen or bedroom, perhaps wouldn't have the doors on the wardrobe, or would have glass-fronted doors so that you can see what's inside, or you take off your beautiful doors off the kitchen cabinets. But you've worked a long time to get your kitchen and your bedroom looking the way that it looked, and that can be really difficult to do that. So this is a little bit of a more low-key way of doing it. But the other point, just to emphasize, I think you touched on there, Gina, is when I've spoken to carers over the years, often what carers say is when other carers, so paid care workers, come in to support them, that's great, it's really helpful, but there is a sense of intrusion, because the person's come in to help both of you, and they're in your kitchen and they're going to make the tea, or they're going into the bedrooms, but some carers feel they're kind of rifling through their personal stuff, because they're opening drawers to try and find where something is, and they're opening drawers that perhaps you wouldn't have really wanted them to.
No.
So once you've labelled them, then that's much easier for the carer, and the tension reduces, and it's much better for your relationship as well.
And the symbols don't have to be intrusive. We can keep them small, you can keep them subtle, you can keep them kind of all uniform, but it is such a key and important thing to help somebody maintain their independence.
And also it's very unique to each individual as well. So it's unique to the carer, but it's also unique to the person with dementia. And, you know, I said before that we know that taking cupboards off doors can be really useful for a person with dementia, because they can see what's behind the door. But James has put a comment here that he says they actually had a bad experience of taking the doors off the cupboards in the kitchen, and because his dad was very upset by it. And, you know, knowing about the person themselves, perhaps James's dad had been very instrumental in that kitchen being built, or, you know, had invested a lot of time or resources into it. So for him to see that taken apart was quite difficult. So knowing the person with dementia as well, and knowing whether it's going to be the best fit for them. And James has said pictures would make more sense.
Nobody likes change, do they? People don't like change. People want to keep things as uniform and as much the same as they can, and I wouldn't like my kitchen not having kitchen cupboards on. It doesn't look great, so you know, you can understand it would upset people.
Yeah, so I think a couple of things about if people are going to go down the route, as James is perhaps going to try now, of putting pictures. Sometimes we see that people will take a photo of what's inside the cupboard and put the picture on the outside of the cupboard. A really useful one that can happen for is fridges, actually, because you definitely can't go around taking the door off your fridge, can you? So opening the fridge, taking a photo and putting it on the front of the fridge can be useful. The same with wardrobes. But if we are going down the route of symbols, which as you've discussed here, symbols themselves can be really useful, because it doesn't matter what the brand is inside then, does it? And they're well researched pictures. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And like with the symbols that I've tried to create, we've tried to keep them as uniform as possible. We've tried to make sure that any people in the pictures are age neutral or gender neutral. We offer different skin colors and things, just so that they relate to as many people as possible. We try and be really, really generic and not have it specific, like you say, it's not branded or anything like that. It's just showing everybody that it could hopefully apply to anybody. Whilst pictures might be a bit more, pictures can work really well for some, but for others, for some people, they might find that if it's not exactly what they were expecting, if the picture shows one thing, they might expect to find exactly that. If you see what I mean.
But I think the other thing is if we go back to your sequence of getting dressed, and you've got the pictures on that board, you could ideally have exactly the same picture on the cupboards, couldn't you? So it matches. So you've got your board on your sequencing. This is the picture that I've got, and I match it to those items in the house, which is quite useful. I think it's important to talk about some of the golden rules around signs and symbols around the house. I think one of them being contrast. Would you agree about colours on symbols?
Absolutely. So it's, again, this isn't something that comes down to the individual, but I mean, you've taught me, Sue, that the people with dementia will benefit from having bright colours, from a sign that really, really stands out. So hence why we've made this one yellow on red, so that it really, really stands out. But at the same time, you might not want red boards all over your house, and you might not want bright yellow. And also yellow can be a warning sign. So it's really down to the individual and what's going to work for them. You might want something a bit more subtle in your home. But if you know that the person that you are caring for really benefits from bright colours, then I would have those bright colours, because they will stand out and be the most obvious. And ultimately, they're there to be used, aren't they, these symbols?
Yeah, and there is no right or wrong, as long as there is a big contrast between the colours and the wording, That's the most important thing. So, and colours that somebody is going to be happy with. So we see a lot when you go into hospital buildings, community centres, various other public places. They'll often go for a yellow sign with either white writing or black writing on it. And that's fantastic because it gives a great colour contrast. But equally, it's worth weighing up that just because they're doing that there, it doesn't mean it's the best practice for your home. You want to keep your home a very relaxed environment. But we all know that yellow background on symbols tends to suggest danger or hazard. If you see them on the side of lorries and they've got a yellow background, it's suggesting it's hazardous. If you have a slips, trips and falls sign in a corridor, then it's a yellow background. So it is worth considering, just because lots of other places use a yellow background, you don't have to go and get lots of yellow cardboard to do it, because it might not be the right colour for you. And then I think the other thing is having the contrasting colours, something that works for the individual, something that the person is going to be happy having around the house, and you're going to be happy having around the house. And then if you are making your own and you're going to laminate them, it's to get non-shiny laminate, isn't it?
Absolutely, because shiny, what we call gloss laminate has a glare on it, and some people cannot cope with that glare. It distracts them, especially somebody who's got sensory processing issues. They might find that too much. So if you get laminate, we really recommend getting it with a matte surface, so that there's no reflection.
And just to say, Claire has commented here about the photos that we talked about. Sometimes for some people it's better with photos, sometimes it's pictures. For her, the photos didn't work, as she thought the picture was the inside of the cupboard, and so he was reaching for it, but wasn't arranged. So it's about testing what works for you as a carer and what works for the person with dementia. It goes back to the phrase, doesn't it, that we always talk about: when you've met one person with dementia, you've met one person with dementia, which Tom Kitwood said. And I'd love for people in this chat box to carry on the discussion about what worked for them, because the best advice comes from those who've tried it, really.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to another question, and this one says, I've heard differing opinions about using signage on front doors, and what are our thoughts on this? So I think what this person's asking about is that sometimes we talk about putting a sign on a door, perhaps that you don't want someone to go through because it might cause them a risk, such as going outside and walking down the street and causing dangerous situations. I think that's so what are your thoughts on this one?
Well, first of all, I'd say with a front door, you can use visuals by a front door just to remind someone what they need to take with them when they do go out. So, for example, next to the front door, you could have wallet, keys, phone, a reminder. If it's a door that you don't want someone to go out, then absolutely, you could use a visual. But I mean, that's why I would turn to you for advice, Sue, because as a teacher, we would always try and use positive language. So I wouldn't say, don't run, I would say walk. Now, would you suggest that a sign that says don't go out this door, would that work well for someone with dementia, or do we need to try and use positive language there?
Again, I think it comes down to the individual. Sometimes somebody will just need a very straight, don't go out this door, and that will make more sense to them. If someone told me don't, it would probably get my back up and I'd want to do it even more, I have to say. So it probably wouldn't work for me. I would probably benefit from, we'll go through this door when Jane gets here. Wait for Jane and we'll go through. So I would, but that's lengthier, isn't it?
And we've also got to consider the whole fire risk, and if somebody takes it literally, don't go through this door. Well, actually, there are times when they have to go through the door. If there's a fire in the house, they have to go through the door. So again, I know we keep coming back to the same message, but it is about knowing the individual and finding what works for them and what kind of language copes for them, will work best for them.
Yeah, and I think this touches a little bit on sort of the idea around, can you lock a door, that for somebody with dementia. And I'd just like to say there is a really useful article about this on Alzheimer's Society website about when it would be appropriate to lock a door, when it would be appropriate to tell someone not to go in through it because of the risk factors and best interests. So some really useful information on their website. But also, if it was around this situation that you were trying to avoid someone going through the door, but you were concerned about risk, then do get in touch with us and we can pick up a conversation. You can ring us on our phone lines, or you can send an email in to us, and we can talk through any specific situations with you to help you out on that. I think there's lots of visual things you can do around doors that goes beyond the signs and the symbols as well, aren't there? So some of the things we suggest to carers is if it's a door that you would prefer somebody not to be going through, is giving less contrast that the door is there. So the opposite of doing the symbols, really, making sure that area is darkened. There's no cues that would want someone to go through that door. So sometimes if you have coats and things hanging by a front door, that prompts someone to say, oh, I'm going to put my coat on and I want to go through that door. So removing those prompts and those ideas that might make somebody think, I need to leave the house and I need to go and do something else. So it's a combination, really, isn't it, of signs and symbols, knowing the person, knowing why they might want to go through that door, and putting the whole thing together.
It's prepping the whole environment, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Someone has said here, again, I've been considering getting an audio sensor. So this is for the doors as well, I think. I've been considering getting an audio sensor for my dad after seeing them on a documentary. They look really useful. I just wondered if they're common for people with dementia still living at home. So I think now we're going into audio visual aids, aren't we? But they can be beneficial when they're put together.
Absolutely. One of the things that's hard about spoken language is tone of voice. It's bringing tone of voice into the equation of already having to understand language. So if I said to you, get dressed, and then I said to you, get dressed, somebody who's processing that might hear those as two completely different instructions. Even though I've used the same words, I've used a very different tone of voice. Therefore, they were halfway through processing the first one, and now I've said it differently. It's another layer of complication that is just putting up another barrier for communication. So it really helps if with visuals, with just words and a picture, you've got no tone of voice. Now, I'm not familiar with these audio, what do you call them, audio sensor, but I assume they use the same tone of voice every time.
Yes,
brilliant.
They do. Yeah.
Excellent. So again, it's an alternative form of communication, which is exactly what we want. So let's combine it with pictures as well. Brilliant.
I think I noticed your change in tone of voice, Gina. If you were with me and you told me to get dressed strongly and then told me sternly to get dressed, I'd pick up the difference, and it would make me feel anxious. I think the one thing we know about dementia is often people lose the ability to follow words, but they retain the ability to follow the intonation pattern. So like you say, if you're saying, if you've got an audio sensor that's saying, wait for Gina to arrive when you get to the door, or Dad, wait for me to arrive before you go through the door, that sensor is going to use the same tone of voice. It's going to be relaxed, it's going to be calm, it's going to help facilitate the person to be calm. Whereas, as you gave the great example of, no, wait till I get there, please wait till I get there, there becomes a desperation in the voice, and it can become more difficult. So audio sensors, I would agree, for this person who's come in, can be very beneficial, and lots of people do use audio sensors. Again, it's individual, because some people with an audio sensor, they'll wonder where the person is. So they hear the voice and then might become distressed by, they can hear the voice in the house, but where's it coming from? And so that can be quite distressing. So trialing them is often really a useful thing. Same as we've seen with the visuals, trial them and see if it works for you, because it is very individual. But there's an important point, I think, that we could make going back to the visual tools and those signs on doors, whether it's where something is or where perhaps somebody wants to be encouraged to go towards, that they mix well with the audio, don't they? Because the audio is quite transient.
We're basically trying to provide as many different communication alternatives as we can. So yes, if you've got the audio and you've got the picture as well, then you're double supporting the communication, aren't you? You're giving another method. So it's just more ways of getting the message across. But like you say, some of these aren't going to work for the individual, and so it is unfortunately a question of trial and error and finding out what works best. And there will be a right way for each person, I think. Would you agree, Sue?
Yes, I would. And I think the thing is, as we say, the audio can work very well, but visual stays there. The audio is there and then it's gone, isn't it? Until the door is rattled again and it sets off the audio sensor again. Whereas the picture's always in that person's eye line whilst they're there. And so it's a continuous prompt for the person. So they work really well together, I would say, and testing. So we're nearly out of time, Gina, and there's just one other part that I want to come to, and that we've touched on it slightly already, but that's the emotional well-being of family and friends, and also according to the comments as well, the emotional well-being of the person with dementia who got very upset about cupboard doors being taken off. But we talked about somebody might find that having all these new stickers over the beautifully new carved kitchen or bedroom cabinets can be quite difficult to manage. It can help though if carers are paid care workers are coming in and they know where to go to, and you don't feel that it's quite so invasive. But I just want to bring in children as well. So the grandchildren or young children of people perhaps with a young onset dementia, because I think it's a lovely activity to get family involved in. Developing those signs and symbols.
I think children absolutely love it. I've always got my children involved in making different visual symbols, and they love it. And I think it would build relationships, and it will help the children feel that they're helping their grandparent, and vice versa. If they can together, these are things that you can make at home. If there are companies like mine, but there are many others as well that will send you the pictures to use at home if you want to just make them yourself, and just stick them up and turn it into a positive experience, I think.
And also change it into a positive experience by involving the person with dementia. So having that discussion about this might help you, and then putting them together so that those are agreeable symbols for that person. But also, as you've just touched on, there may be an activity to do with a grandchild as well, and getting them involved in the care process.
Exactly.
Really.
And letting the person with dementia decide where they go. Do they go in the corner of the drawer? Do they go in the middle of the drawer? What side? What works for you, so that you can still see it, but it's not too much in your bedroom or in your kitchen.
And I think the more you can collaborate with the person with dementia early on as well, then the person gets used to them being there and how to use them, rather than it being a crisis measure afterwards as well. We're just about out of time. So before we finish, I'm going to give one more quote that's just come in from William. And I think this is a lovely finish to what we've been talking about here. He says, using symbols on cupboards has been a game changer for my dad.
Amazing.
So if ever, if people want to put some questions in, please carry on the chat, anyone on this, around what they found has helped and how it worked for them. But thank you so much, Gina, for joining us today. It's been brilliant to have you here again, and we will put this one on YouTube as well, won't we, alongside the other one, so that you can come back and watch it again. You can pass it on to somebody else. You can let them know that it's there so that they can watch it. We do have another live online session on the 10th of February, which is around reasoning, planning and emotional responses. So our live online sessions take a topic and we look into it and explore it. That session on the 10th of February looks at reasoning and planning, and a lot of what we've talked today about is how you can help someone to plan an activity through daily living. So people might find it useful to go onto our website if they wish to and book onto that session if it sounds of interest to you. We'll put a link in the chat actually around all of our live online sessions. As I say, if you have any comments, then do carry on putting them in there, and we will stay and look at them afterwards, and someone will get back to you as soon as possible. But in the meantime, thank you again, Gina.
Thank you for having me.
All right, and we'll maybe have you for a third time sometime soon in 2023.
Brilliant.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.